Hey kids, it's JJ again. Today I just wanted to go over some video transmission solutions for micro brushless quads, or any small quad that you want to use. Basically what I use, this is my fly egg build that I did. Flies great, love it, and I'm using one of these cheeky little cameras in here. This is just a 25 milliwatt transmitter, same thing that I always used in my brushed quads. So I thought good enough for that, I'll use it for these. But the problem is, these are much faster and go farther faster, and you want to go farther faster with these, and 25 milliwatts for flying around the yard or the house is okay, or if you're in a completely unobstructed clear area. I love these little cameras. I've used them for a long time. They work pretty well. This is basically what that is. 25 milliwatt, nothing fancy. You know, plug it in. Got channel changer. I usually hack this third pin right here. Video out right here. Video in. I'm sorry, this is video out, video in for my OSD. These run about 20 bucks. And pretty decent little cameras, not bad. What I'm going to be putting in is these. This is the Eachine FPV transmitter VTX03, meaning it has 3 degrees of power: 25 milliwatt, 50 milliwatt, 200 milliwatt, or off, which I really like. So if you're on the bench working on your quad, you can just turn it off, doesn't suck down your battery. This is basically a 600 TVL generic camera. Both of these I got off Banggood. I'll put the links in the description. This is the NTSC version, right there, boom. And this is stupid small. Little bags. Where would we be without little bags? Now, this guy, 600 TVL, so it's actually still probably better than one of these things. Look how small this guy is. Very teeny. And it even has a microphone, which I will not be using. There's the mic on the bottom there. I'll just cut that off. And this white wire, red's your power, yellow's your signal, black is your ground, obviously, and then white is your sound. So I'll be taking that white wire off, I'll be clipping the end, taking this microphone off, and that's all there is to it. This way is right side up. Okay, so you're going to mount it in your quad with the wires facing down. Not this way, that's upside down. I've already put these in a different, this setup in a different quad, and it works really well. What I do recommend, these are medium grade wires. They're not the worst, but they're not the best as far as flexibility goes. Gently flex these back like that, and then put a little bit of hot glue right there, because these are very thin wires and they will break with vibration fairly quickly. So put a little dab of hot glue across there, bada bing, you're ready to rock and roll. It's already in focus. Well, let's hope. It does rotate a little bit. So anyhow, you can focus that if you need to, and I'll be just basically hot gluing it into here, looks like, which is a little hillbilly, but it works. This thing is so light. Let's see what it weighs on the scale that nobody can see. This thing comes in at 2 grams. Okay, subtract half that wire and that and the mic, probably 1.5 grams. So that's cool. Now the transmitter. Again, this is Eachine, and this transmitter is really nice. I like the fact that it's got a removable antenna. You could put a clover leaf on here if you need to. When you plug this thing in, you've got a button on the top here. Short press changes channels. Medium press, meaning 2 seconds, will change your band. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, you know, all that stuff. And if you hold it down for like 5 seconds, it will go 0, then 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash. 0 is off, 1 dash is 25 milliwatt, 2 dashes is 50 milliwatt, and 3 is 200. Again, this actually has the output power for your camera. Okay, so if you look at this, this is your input power, so this is what you would connect to your board. Both of these are 5 volts, like 3.5 to 5 volts. Then this, you've got black, red, and yellow. You can actually wire your camera directly to here, and then this is your signal. And it will power your camera as well, which is really kind of cool. especially for these micro builds where you don't have a ton of room. Now, a couple tricks with this. First thing that you want to do, this switch on the back I found is extremely fragile as far as staying on the board. So what I'm going to do is mix up some epoxy and put a dot, just a dot right back here of epoxy to give it a little bit more stiction, you know, make it stick to that board a little bit better. Don't use hot glue because this thing gets hot and the hot glue will just turn and get warm again and it's really not going to do you much good. However, I will be using my little heat shrink hot glue trick for this. And what I do with that is I'll pop this off and I'll slide a small piece of heat shrink tubing up here. I'll put some hot glue down around this area and then slide that down really fast and it will solidify, and I'll probably put a little bit of an arc on it there and that'll keep her sticking out of the frame because this thing is going to be really easy to put in here, I think. It's not going to be too hard at all. That's the biggest drawback with a two-piece is it does take up a little bit more space, but worth its weight in gold because you got 200 milliwatts of power here. So pretty excited about that, being able to fly these things like a real quad as far as the distance goes. And that's really about it. Definitely, if you crash, this will pop off. It's nice that you can replace it, but it's bad that you can lose it, obviously. So either solder this, heat this up with a soldering iron, and dab a little bit of solder right there and on the outside, because this is ground, and that will lock it in. I've done that before. I'll probably just do the hot glue trick. That way I can take it off, and definitely I'm going to put a little dab of epoxy right there. Just to hold that switch in there to keep her from busting. And then I'm going to put it in the fly egg build that I did and do some DVR footage for you through my goggles, and I'll post it right on the back of this and I'll give my comments. So stay tuned, give me 30 seconds and we'll be in the air. Bye. Hey kids, well that was fun. The quad flew great. I did not, but it flew fine. And here's what I did. This is again the Egg 100 frame. And I put the camera here and I put the VTX, the transmitter right here. I can actually access the switch button right through here. Put a couple little hot glue pads, if you will, to keep everything insulated, and then just zip stripped it up into the frame. Fit great. Then I took heat shrink, my little trick that I take a bunch of hot glue, put some heat shrink over it, and while it's still hot, you bend the heat shrink back and it stays put like this. I crashed this a few times before the roof debacle. I did hit the roof. Now, but it flew fine. The image, as you saw, is beautiful. I couldn't be happier. Couple caveats. If you're going to put this thing, this setup, into a Fly Egg 100, here's a tip. Take these two side plates and reverse them. If you notice right here, you see how it's indented? Okay, that's to mount like a Runcam Micro or a Foxeer Micro camera, and it gives you a little bit more width, okay? Because this one's usually over here, and this one's usually over here, and this indent is on the inside. Since this camera is so tiny, I flipped the frame around, so there is no indent. The indent's on the outside. That gives me a little bit more of a nicer clearance. I just held it in there, shot a little bit of hot glue through these holes. That's all you need. Excuse me, it's only a 2-gram camera. It ain't going anywhere. Another caveat I noticed, when I first took off, I started flying for about a block, and all of a sudden it just started getting blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. So I brought it in. That was the camera defocusing because it was really, really loose. You can literally just spin it in and out on the lens. So I got it back and I landed or crashed, whatever. But and I stuck just a dab of hot glue on the bottom after I got it back in focus. Bam, and it's fine. Should never move again. I don't recommend using super glue because that would be bad. But that worked out really well. The other caveat to this is, even though my box on the camera did say NTSC, yeah, it came out PAL, which is okay. I really don't care. PAL makes you a little bit more narrow, but it actually gives you a nicer picture, in all honesty, than NTSC does. So that was interesting. And the reason I knew that was my Betaflight OSD would not show up. And I put it into PAL mode, and it showed up just fine, as you see in the video. So for some reason, this one's running in PAL. Again, I'm really okay with that. Doesn't matter at all. I think it's a beautiful image. The transmission was great, as you saw. I flew a pretty good distance away around the block, a couple streets away, and this thing just handled great. However, one thing to make note of, like I said in the beginning, this is a 0, meaning you can turn it off, 25 milliwatt, 50 milliwatt, or 200 milliwatt. There is no 100. I flew this in that video on 200, and it sucked the shit out of the battery. I'm just warning you right now. It definitely, I didn't start with a totally fresh battery, so, I mean, but it was reasonably fresh. Maybe a volt low, and this thing's a dog anyway. This thing sucks power to begin with because it's not the lightest frame anyway. But it did probably take a good 40 seconds, I would say, out of flight time. So I actually, when I came back in, I put it on 50 milliwatt instead of 25, because I usually don't fly these little guys real far away, but I wanted something that was better than 25 milliwatt. So that should give me maybe a third more flying it on 50 versus 25. As we all know, milliwatts do not double your range. Maybe you get a third more out of it, something like that. But other than that, it performed great. But I was running a 500 milliamp, actually a 550 if I remember right, a 550 milliamp 3S on this thing, and my battery only lasted 2 minutes. Now I was hauling, you know, I was flooring it quite a bit on the throttle, but still, that's not super. So I knocked it down to 50. It should be good. Let's see, what else is there? I think that's about it. If you're doing a really tight build, this might be a little tricky to get in. Like, I'm going to put one in this one too. I'm probably going to slide the VTX right back here, because I already did that once before on a similar build to this on a Toad, and it seemed to work okay. If I can make my wiring work, I'll do that. If you're doing a really tight build, like a pod build or something like that, it's going to be tricky to do. You may have to mount the VTX on the outside, but either way, I'm very happy with this. I think the image is brilliant. The transmission signal looks really good, despite the fact that I'm in PAL, which, again, PAL truly does give you a better picture, but it does narrow the scope of your screen. And the neat thing is, and I'll put the links to these again in the bottom of the description, this rig with the 2550 200 milliwatt transmitter with the camera is about 20 bucks. I think 21 American dollars. And that is about the price I pay for these. These, I think, are between 17 and 20, depending on who you get them from. Much better deal on this if you have the real estate to put it in. But for 20 bucks, hell, I think that's a great gig. You could, if you wanted to, put this on a bigger build even, because it will transmit 200 milliwatt. They're both 5-volt input, and very straightforward to use. So if you have any questions at all, please let me know. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Cool. Keep sunny side up. When you land like this, it's bad. Talk soon. Bye-bye.